On today's show, the second round is set for the Cavs as they're going to be taking on the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference semifinals. We will take a quick glance at what that series might look like. Plus, we're going to take one last look back at the historic sweep of the Miami Heat. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. As we get started here, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on the Game Time app for $20 off your first purchase. The conference semifinals are set for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Of course, they advanced to round 2 of the playoffs on Monday with a 55, it's still funny to say, a 55-point win over the Miami Heat to finish off a sweep. I want to take a look back at that a little bit later. Maybe one or two things that I think the Cavs may have discovered out of necessity in that series that could be useful moving forward. But I want to start by talking just shortly here about the Indiana Pacers, because that is who the Cavs will be taking on in round number 2, beginning on Sunday at Rocket Arena. As I record this, it's around 11 o'clock Tuesday night. So I know that game 1 is on Sunday. I don't know what time game 1 will be. I don't know when game 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will be either. All we know is game 1 Sunday in Cleveland, Ohio. The Cavs play the Pacers, a Central Division opponent, 4 times this year. I am prepared to say that none of those matchups matter. I do not think anything that happened between the Cavs and the Pacers during the regular season matters at all going into this postseason. I didn't quite get all the way there against Miami. I thought that some of the Cavs matchups against the Heat during the regular season, you could read into a little bit, but I don't think you can do that in this series, because I think that early in the 2 first matchups, so the Cavs played twice in January and then twice in April, 2 of the 3 final games of the season. Indiana came to Cleveland for the first matchup of the year. They smoked the Cavs. They ran them off the floor in the second half. That ended the 12-game winning streak that the Cavs had. That part, beating Oklahoma City, was part of. And Tyrese Halliburton only played in the first half in that game for Indiana, did not play in the second half. And then they played again 2 days later in Indy, and the Cavs won that game by 10 points. I believe it was like 127-117. Pascal Siakam had a great first half for the Pacers and then did nothing in the second half because the Cavs changed up some things defensively. But what I think is important about those 2 matchups is, what did Cleveland's roster look like at that point? Well, George Niang was still on the team. Karis LeVert was still on the team. DeAndre Hunter was still playing for the Atlanta Hawks. And I think that's a really, really important thing, especially as we get past the series against Miami, where we saw what DeAndre Hunter is capable of in a postseason setting. And then let's fast forward to the final 2 games that these 2 teams played against each other during the regular season. It was the last week of the regular season. It was the last game on Sunday, April 13th, in which Jarrett Allen played 41 seconds. He was the only starter for the Cavs that played. Nobody else of consequence played in that game. It was essentially the Cleveland Charge against the Fort Wayne Mad Ants for most of it. Now, Pacers starters played some of that game and didn't play well against the Cavs, but overall, the Cavs didn't play anybody. So I can't read anything into that. And then you go back to the Thursday before that, which was the third to last regular season game for the Cavs this year. They played in Indy. It was the first game after they had clinched the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They go to Indy. They play the Pacers. They have a lead. That is a game they probably should have won. However, Donovan Mitchell didn't play. Darius Garland didn't play. Evan Mobley didn't play. I believe Jarrett Allen only played a half in that game. They closed that game out not even with the guys that played most of those minutes. Because if you remember back to that game, Ty Jerome was awesome, which, sort of goes in line with what he's done whenever Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell's been out. Both those guys were out in that game, and Ty was awesome because, of course, he was. DeAndre Hunter was really good. Sam Merrill, I believe, hit 5 threes in that game. Like, that was a game that the Cavs looked really good using guys that were not their starters, and they had Indy on the ropes. But what they did was they didn't close with those guys. They closed with Tristan Thompson. They closed with Javonte Green, Craig Porter Jr., Isaac Okoro, Jalen Tyson. Like, those are the guys that played big fourth quarter minutes, not the starting 5 that night, which was DeAndre Hunter, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, Ty Jerome, and Jared Allen played 15 minutes when we only played the first half. The Cavs played really well in that game, but I can't look at that game and say, you know what, because the Cavs backups looked great against the Pacers, and the Pacers at that point were still playing for something. But because the Cavs backups looked really good in that game, I can't say, oh, Cleveland has an advantage. No, Cleveland has an advantage in this series because the Cavs are a significantly better team. Now, the Pacers are a much, much better team than what we just saw the Cavs play in the Miami Heat. I expect this to be a much different series than what we just got done watching between Cleveland and Miami. But the Cavs still have a pretty significant talent edge. They are a significantly better team. The Pacers got off to a not great start this year. I think they were 10-15 in their first 25 games. And after that, they played at like a 53, 54, 55 win pace. They were awesome. They were legitimately a really, really, really good basketball team for most of this season. The Cavs were a great basketball team for all of this season. The Cavs should win this series. I will pick the Cavs to win this series. I have not decided how many games I think this series is going to go, and there are certainly a few more shows to do between now and when the ball be tossed in the air on Sunday at whatever time it gets tossed in the air at Rocket Arena. But this is a series the Cavs should win. The early odds are out on FanDuel. I believe the Cavs are minus 460 favorites to win this series. Like, that is a bigger, I believe, a bigger gap. Like, the Cavs are a heavier favorite in this series than the Pacers were against the Bucks, than the Knicks were against the Pistons before those series tipped off. Like, that is what the odds makers think of this series, and I think it's appropriate. I think that this is a series the Cavs, if they play to their potential, I don't think this will be a long series. Now, I think Indy can have a lot to say about that because the Pacers are a very good basketball team. I do think that they have some things that can present problems to the Cavs, and how the Cavs solve those problems will be very interesting to see and very important to see. The Pacers are not going to be a pushover. They're not going to be what Miami was, but the Cavs are a much better team than they are. Like, this is a series that if the Cavs play like the Cavs, they will win. It should be 5, maybe 6 games. If the Cavs don't play like the Cavs, if they allow the Pacers to dictate how the style of this series, the Cavs could be in for a long series. And this isn't some series like with Miami. It felt like a series that the Cavs just had to show up and they were going to win. And of course, they did so much more than just show up and won. But if the Cavs just show up in this series, this is when they can lose. Like, the Pacers are that good. But if the Cavs play like the Cavs, if the Cavs play anything like what we saw in the opening series against the Miami Heat, they will be fine. They will get through the series because they showed just how dominant they can be. Like, those types of efforts, and of course, the Pacers are going to be much better than the Heat. I cannot say that enough. But those types of efforts against any team in the NBA, good enough to win a series. Certainly good enough to win a series against the Pacers. How they defend Tyrese Halliburton, I think, will be an interesting thing. What Miles Turner does against them will be a very interesting thing. But I do think that one of my early keys to this series, and I will spend, I promise, the next few shows this week, after we put the Miami series to bed, I will spend the rest of this week talking about Cavs Pacers. But how Indy defends the Cavs with Donovan, with Darius, who I have no reason to believe he will not be healthy by Sunday when game 1 is, with Evan being, I think, a better player at this point than he was when he played against the Pacers back in January. I think that is something that is just worth bringing up here. With DeAndre Hunter, with Ty Jerome playing, I think, better basketball probably than he was playing in early January. How Indy matches up with the Cavs, I think will be a really, really interesting thing to follow. But overall, the Cavs, the bad break for the Cavs is that the Bucks blew that lead in that game and that the Pacers won game 5. Not because the Bucks were ever going to win that series. I don't think anyone expected, especially once Damian Lillard went down. And if you listen to the show, you know that I never expected the Bucks to win that series, even fully healthy. But once that happened, you knew, okay, it's going to be Cavs Pacers in the second round. Like, it was kind of just a formality. Are the Pacers going to win in 5? Are they going to win in 6? Milwaukee had an 8-point lead with 40 seconds left, or a 7-point lead, I think it was, with 40 seconds left in overtime, and just had an absolutely incredible choke job. Really just of incredible proportions. And that was a bad break for the Cavs just because of the rest purposes. If Indy loses that game and they have to go back to Milwaukee for game 6, that game 6 would have been Friday. The Pacers would have obviously had to play 40 more minutes of playoff basketball. They probably would have won that game, or hey, who knows? Maybe the Bucks get another 35-point night from Gary Trent Jr. and it would have gone 7. But that costs the Cavs, I think, a little bit of rest, and it allows the Pacers to be a little bit fresher than they would have been coming into this series. Ultimately, I don't think that will matter, but I think if the Cavs were dreaming up their perfect scenario, the Pacers would not have beaten the Bucks on Tuesday. Yeah, today's Tuesday. Sorry. It's been a long week. The Pacers would not have beaten the Bucks on Tuesday just for the rest purposes. I think everybody would have liked to have seen that series gone a little bit longer than it did. But overall, I think the Cavs have a significant advantage over Indy in this series. All right. I will continue to talk about Cavs versus Pacers tomorrow on the rest of the Locked On Cavs shows this week. There's one thing, maybe two things. There's something that the Cavs were kind of forced into against the Heat that I want to talk about, because I think that the narrative that's kind of floating around out there is unfair, but I do think it's important to address a little bit and sort of how I think it should be viewed. Plus, there are some killer stats from Cavs and Heat that I really want to get to. So we're going to do all that stuff next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting, but between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why Car Gurus is the place to go. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. Need a deal that you can trust? Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And the best feature, they've got price drop alerts so that you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind before stepping into any lot. So buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com. That is cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. Again, that is cargurus.com, cargurus.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Wayfair. It's spring. You know what that means? Other than the fact that my allergies are really bad right now, it means it's time for home improvement. My allergies are bad right now, but it is time for home improvement, because whether you want to refresh a room or tackle a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. Small updates like a stylish cabinet, or I don't know, changing a faucet, to big updates like a new vanity, maybe totally redoing your bathroom, putting in some sick outdoor lighting so you can enjoy that great Northeast Ohio weather that we get, right? Because it's the best. Wayfair's got what you need, quality products for every budget. Their free and fast shipping makes it easy, so you don't have to haul heavy items from the store to your home. Plus, they've got top brands like GE and Moen at great prices. Shopping is seamless, and you'll find exactly what you need to fit your space and style. And Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That is WAYFAIR.com, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. So there was some conversation going on, and I woke up on like 2.5 hours sleep on Tuesday morning to appear on the Ken Carmen show with Anthony Lima at 8 a.m. And one of the things they asked me about was, Darius Garland has missed time. Obviously, Ty Jerome has played very well. I thought, the best game he had in this series was game 1, I think it's fair to say. Not that they needed him to be great. I thought he was good in game 3 where he had 11 assists. In game 4, I don't know that they needed anything from him. He was good, but like that, it didn't matter. They won by 55. And I was asked about, is there something to be said about Ty in that role and Darius not there and the Cavs having so much success? And I think that is a little bit of an unfair way to look at things with Darius, because I do think he's been really good. Ty has obviously been awesome too. But the change that the Cavs were able to make when Darius wasn't out there, I don't think had anything to do with Darius. I think that injury forced their hand a little bit in that series, in the final 2 games of that series, because it made them play bigger, right? So often they have 2 of Darius, Donovan, and Ty on the floor. And what that has done at times, which I think has been a negative at times, is that has pushed Sam Merrill to the 3 spot pretty frequently when he's a 2. Like that is one of the unintended consequences of having 3 guards that are all really good, 2 of whom are all-stars, and another one in Ty Jerome, who's a 6th Man of the Year candidate. So they have we've talked for a couple of years about the team having a surplus in the front court with Allen and Mobley. Well, they have more than that in the backcourt because they've got 3 guys as opposed to 2. But what Garland being out meant was there was far less time with both Jerome and Mitchell on the floor because there wasn't that 3rd guard to take up minutes, right? So that meant that the Cavs spent more time in game 3 and game 4 with bigger lineups than what we're used to seeing them play. And when I say bigger lineups, I'm not talking about, Tristan Thompson was out there with Jarrett Allen. The Cavs played super big. No, what I'm talking about is the in-between guys. I'm not talking about playing Evan and Jarrett together. Obviously, they do that every game. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that they had basically a guard in Donovan or Ty. They had 3 wings because we saw lineups with Max and DeAndre and Dean, and then we saw Jarrett or Evan playing center. And those lineups were awesome defensively. I think that is when the Cavs are at their best defensively. I think it's something like Evan, DeAndre, Dean, Max, or Isaac, depending on the matchup. I think that's kind of the interchangeable spot where Max made more sense against Miami. Maybe he makes more sense against Indy too. I'm not sure yet, but I think Isaac could be plugged into that spot. And then Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. Like, I think that is kind of where they are. They don't have very many places to attack. Like if it is Donovan, who I think is a better defender than Darius because of his size and his wingspan, there's not a weak spot on the Cavs defensively. And I think that is something that really gave Miami problems. So what I think that we learned from this is, 1, how good that group can be, because we didn't see a lot of that during the regular season. But 2, that needs to be something that Kenny Atkinson is comfortable throwing out there when everybody's available. I do think that one of the things I'm very fascinated about moving forward in the postseason is, what do Kenny Atkinson's rotations look like, right? Like, he pretty consistently, I guess at least in games 1 and 2, he played 10 guys. And then when Darius Garland went down, he played 9 guys. But that was more just because Darius got hurt. I think when everybody's healthy, that needs to be a lever that Kenny is willing to pull a little bit more often than I think he was in the regular season. Because I do think that is an issue. That's a lineup that is really, really good on both ends of the floor. And I'm not saying that should be the starting group. I'm not saying that should be the group that plays the most minutes, but I think that the Cavs should be a little bit more aggressive in spending time on the floor with lineups that don't have 2 guards, with lineups that have a guard, 3 wings, and a big. I think that is probably something we learned from this Miami series, because that was super successful. Watching that, DeAndre Hunter was so good. I think partially in games 3 and 4, because he played more time at the small forward spot. And I know that because I've asked Kenny Atkinson about this, I know that they don't view this as he's playing the 3, he's playing the 4. But I do think when he's out there with another wing that can do some of the rebounding stuff, because while DeAndre's rebounding has ticked up since he came from Atlanta, he's not a great rebounder. He's not a power forward. He's a small forward that can play power forward, and the Cavs obviously play him more at power forward than small forward. But I don't think it's coincidental that we see how good that looks when he's playing that spot. And this conversation is going to boil down to, I think, publicly, Jerome and Garland, because what's the thing that changed is, Darius Garland wasn't there. But the thing that actually changed is what the Cavs did in other spots, because they didn't play 2 guards at all times. It had nothing to do with the fact that Darius Garland wasn't out there. Like if Ty Jerome would have been the one that had gotten hurt and they did these lineup configurations, except Darius Garland was out there instead of Ty Jerome, the conversation probably looks different, but the lineups would have been just as successful. And I think that is something to think about here, because it's not as if, the Cavs are better without Darius Garland. That's a really silly talking point. They're not better without Darius Garland. Ty has been awesome all year, but Darius Garland is an all-star caliber player. He's an all-NBA caliber player. Ty's not at that level. He's a really, really good player, but he's not at that level. The Cavs are not better without Darius Garland. The Cavs were different without Darius Garland. And being different is something they will need to be in this exact way, I think, in the future. And I do think it's a really, really good thing for them that they discovered this now. Maybe we see it against Indy. Maybe we don't see it against Indy. I would think they're going to need to go to this against Boston. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think against Boston, there are going to have to be times where it is Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, 3 wings, and Evan Mobley or Jared Allen. I really think that is going to be something that needs to be in the cards. And I think it's a really good thing that the Cavs saw success using that so early on in the postseason. Now, the sweep over the Heat not only broke Heat culture, it set some records. I want to talk about those. I want to bring up my favorite stats from the Cavs 4-game sweep over the Miami Heat. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game, unless you're in Miami, because that was not a great atmosphere. There were a lot of good seats available on Game Time in Miami because not very many people showed up. They could have all gotten great last-minute ticket deals on Game Time, but the team quit and the fans didn't show up either. Very late arriving crowd. In Cleveland, however, there's nothing like an atmosphere of an NBA playoff game, because every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, again, in Cleveland, not Miami. And with Game Time, you can be part of it without all the stress of the last-minute ticket hunting experience. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Plus, the all-in pricing. I've told you guys about this before. I don't want to be confused. I don't want to be tricked. I want to know up front what I'm paying. Game Time, they've got the all-in pricing feature, so you're not going to be surprised with fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's show also brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. And at Epicor, the all-stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with a global vision, Epicor will equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show on YouTube. And if you're watching, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. There were a lot of incredible stats to come out of the Cavs 4-game sweep over the Miami Heat. I want to talk about a few of them because they are absolutely ridiculous. I sat in my seat inside the Kaseya Center on Monday night, just kind of like repeating to myself and to Ryan Lewis of the Akron Beacon Journal and Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com, because the three of us all sat next to each other in media row. And I was just kind of like, I've never seen anything like this. And part of the reason why I've never seen anything like this is because it hasn't happened. A 55-point win in a closeout game, the largest win in an elimination game in NBA history. It had never happened before. It was the fourth largest postseason win ever, and the largest win a team. It was a win or go home situation. So it was just jarring to watch. But my first favorite stat, the Cavs outscored the Heat by 122 points in 4 games. NBA record. Obviously, game 1, they won by 21. Game 2, they won by 9. So like those were, game 1 was a blowout, game 2 was close, but not like out of ordinary things. The Cavs trailed 15-6, like 5.5 minutes in. I think it was 5 minutes and 26 seconds into game 3. They were down 15-6. From that point on, so the final 90 plus minutes and 34 seconds of the series in Miami, the Cavs outscored the Heat 256-155. They outscored the Heat in 90 minutes of game time by 101 points. That is one of the most ridiculous stats that I have ever heard. That is the stat to me that when I think of this series that we just got done watching, that is the stat that I'm going to think of, is that it was the most dominant 90 minutes of basketball that any team has ever played in the postseason. That's what the Cavs did to the Heat. And I think that stat is the best way to talk about it. Offensively, the Cavs had an offensive rating in this series, 136.2. 136.2 offensive rating. That is, as you might imagine, the best offensive rating in a single series in NBA postseason history. There has never been a series in which a team in NBA history had a better offensive performance per 100 possessions than what the Cavs did to the Miami Heat. And with that, too, it's not as if they did this against the Washington Wizards. And I'm sorry if you're a Wizards fan that found this and you're catching a stray here, but that's what we're going to do. Because Washington, obviously not good defensively. Miami was a top 10 defense this year. And I get it. They quit at the end, and that certainly inflates things. But Miami was a top 10 defense, and the Cavs broke the NBA record for best offensive rating in a single series against a defense that finished the regular season 9th in the NBA. Cavs net rating for the series, plus 33.5. As you might, assume, very fair assumption here, they were the number 1 offense, obviously in league history. So of course they were this year. They were the number 2 defense in the second round. Now, of course, these numbers are not final, or in the first round, excuse me. These numbers are not final. The first round is still going on. This could change. I would be surprised if it does, though. But the Cavs finished with a defensive rating in the first round of 102.7. Their net rating is 33.5 in the postseason. 33.5. They outscored Miami by 33.5 points per 100 possessions in a postseason series. Absolutely ridiculous. And then the last one that I want to get to. So Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter, as you probably know, play a lot of minutes together. They typically enter the game at the same time every single night. Like they are the two first guys off the bench for Cleveland in every single game. So throughout the course of this series, they played 73 minutes in 4 games. Obviously, that changed a little bit just because with Garland's injury, like the minute total changed a little bit, and it just like things got a little interesting. But in 73 minutes that they played, the Cavs scored 198 points. They outscored the Heat in 73 minutes with Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter on the floor by 66 points. 66 points. They outscored Miami in 73 minutes. Absolutely bonkers. Now, I don't expect that to keep up. That is an incredible pace. That will not happen. But that stat, I think, speaks to the dominance, the fact that the 6th man and 7th man, whichever order you want to put those two guys in, the fact that when those two guys were on the floor, they outscored Miami by 66 points across a 4-game series is unheard of stuff. Unheard of stuff. Absolutely unheard of. So, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Cavs are facing the Pacers in the second round. I presume, I've not talked to Tony East yet, but Tony and I get along very well. We are friends. I will presume that there's going to be a crossover episode with he and I at some point this week. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow's show. I don't know if it's going to be Thursday show, Friday show, a weekend show. I don't know. I've not talked to him yet, but I can almost guarantee you that will happen. I'm going to spend a lot of this week diving into what the Pacers are, what their first round series against the Bucks look like, how they match up against the Cavs. We're going to start covering this series more in depth tomorrow. I wanted to put a bow on the Heat series. Personally, I was kind of hoping that the Bucks would have won on Tuesday, just so I could spend a little bit more time looking back at what just happened, but that is done. It's time to start looking forward at what is up ahead for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we're going to do that tomorrow and the rest of the week right here on Locked on Cavs. But thank you for making us your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend's subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.